All right, so today I'm going to talk about creating a user-friendly, standards-compliant, future-proofed module, or how to make a cool URI module in Raku. And here I'm going to talk not just about specifically this module that I've been working on, but kind of a more general philosophy of certain types of modules that I think all ecosystems really need, which is ones that implement various standards that we have, but making sure that we're really doing them in a way that's best for the overall ecosystem. We all know how we can have multiple different modules that are, in theory, all implementing all sorts of different standards, and a lot of times they don't actually work on them 100% to spec. And I think that ultimately creates more problems in the ecosystem down the line. So, I wanted to start with a really simple one, parsing an email address, right? It's simple, right? Okay, admit it, you've done it, okay? Right, but what's wrong with it? Yes, fair. What's not wrong with it? Okay? Well, for one, actually, spaces are allowed in an email address if you put them inside of quotes, which now means you have to handle quote parsing. Okay? There's also a max character limit, okay, which is also very weirdly specified because the local part can be 64, the domain can be 25, but overall, in certain standards like SMTP, you can't maximize both of them. This is one reason why doing it in a regex is actually really difficult, because can't really actually track both of those. But now we're going to talk about parsing a URI, right? What are the different parts of one? Well, here we've got one, right? You got the HTTPS, right? Then you got this server name, a port, page, a query, a fragment. Should be pretty simple, right? Okay, and we could maybe do this, right? Schema, domain, path, query, target. That super easy. No. Okay, it's not technically correct, but I mean, it works. So what's the problem? Right, doesn't always work, but also it can be maybe unpredictable. Somebody gives you some other input, doesn't quite work the way you're anticipating it. Might be incompatible, people throw you things, or maybe somebody who's using your engine or this your module will create something that's not compatible with other people's. And if you're accepting input that shouldn't be accepted, right, that could potentially also be a security issue. So how can we fix this? Well, we can make a really high quality module for this. Okay? And this is now my general guiding process of how you should do this. Step one, read the manual. In this case, RFC 3986. Step two, read the manual again. Okay? I say this because there's a lot of little details inside of those that we don't actually seem to generally recognize because we don't see them in practice. But these standards maybe have already contemplated little tiny edge cases, all sorts of other little things in there. Right? Then we want to implement it to spec. Again, this means not taking shortcuts, making sure we're doing everything in there. But also, as I was talking with Bruce earlier, part of this can be making sure we're matching names to what the standards are using. Don't try to change things around, in as much as it can maybe make things look nicer, in Raku world where we like to have more normal sounding names. Maybe you could add them as aliases, but you always want to make sure in the core that you're actually following those, because then people can quickly shift back and forth between the standards. I have another module that I do where it's on the time zone one. And there's some ways that maybe on the math part, I could make it, turn things into one-liners. But if I do that, now it's very hard for me to compare that to reference specs and make sure that I'm following those. So if somebody else can go and look and they see all these single lines of math, there's a reason. It's because I'm following somebody else's. Step four, read the manual again. Okay? Because you will have implemented things and then you will see new things that you missed the first time around. And you want to double check again and again and again. And then you want to create a ton of test files for it. Because you'll make little changes, you'll think maybe I can do a little optimization here, and then you'll break everything. And also, as you're doing this testing, you will find so many weird edge cases that you never thought could have existed. But you're sitting there and you're like, wow, And then finally, we want to make sure that the module is easy to use. You might have the most standards compliant, the most amazing module, but if you make it hard to use, no one's going to use it. They're going to go for that one that's just a drop-in one, even if it's not 100% accurate. So I'm just going to quickly walk you through how I did this for this particular one, right? Steps 1 and 2, we start over with the manual, which in this case is RFC 3986, right? It is absolutely the most amazing literature I've ever read. Okay. But what's really great about a lot of these particular ones that are doing parsing, is that our work is mostly done. This all comes directly from the RFC. Now, it's not in regex format per se, it's in EBNF, but hey, it's a starting point, right? All we have to do is really translate a lot of that to how things would work in Raku. Step 3, right, we're going to implement it to spec, okay? Now, when you look at a URI and you look at most other modules that do it, ultimately they'll have break out the user, the host name, the port as separate higher level, like top level items. But the spec puts those all into this thing called hierarchical parts. And so I do the exact same thing, because again, if you want to reference to the standard, that's what we're going to match with. Now later, once I create a class that people are going to use, right, we can make it more usable for them differently, but at least within what I've got in my code, I just match all the same names, everything, same way as the spec has it. Then step 4, I check the manual again. But here's where I challenge my assumptions for it, right? So this is maybe something that you could imagine somebody doing really quickly for a URI class, right? They put in the authority, right? Then they have the path scheme and then the query. And we note here, I did the query with a % sign, right? And I think a lot of us might have done this on first glance. But there's a couple questions we could ask here. This path, should we make it a list? Because per the standard, it's segments, right? Everything's separated by slashes. So should we make it a list? You know, and the answer to that is maybe. Okay, we can certainly do it if we want, but not every URI standard is actually going to use that as a list. Okay, if you have like the data URI, it ignores it. The query, we all use this as a hash, or at least most of us, because I think lots of us here have done web development, things like that. And so we get that query string, and a lot of the CGIs or different interfaces that we have, they all give us these parameters as a hash. But does the URI standard allow them to be interpreted as such? The answer is no. Okay, so we shouldn't do that. We should keep, in fact, the standard says we should just basically treat it as an opaque string. So that's what we need to do here, is treat it as that. Even though if you look up almost any module, it provides support for doing this. Right. So step 5, roast it. Lots of test cases, right? And these are just a short one of them. I do lots of randomized ones that I know should be well formed, but every other little tiny thing, we've got them all in here, right? Making sure everything meets all of the specs. And again, this is where you find some really weird things. Like, did you know that the user info, like the username that you have in a URI, did you know that it can have a quote mark in it? Unescaped. Right? These are the little strange things that we get. All right? Then step 6, make it easy. And what I mean is a clean API. Think how a user would want to use it. All right? I think this sometimes can be one where we, as developer people are so used to using these things, we're like, oh, that's okay. I can manage whatever interface that this particular module has. I'll just write some wrappers around it. But why make our end users have to create wrappers to make it easier to use? Keep it as simple as we can. So in this case, here's how this one works for me. Just say URI new, dump in the string, and now everything works on there. But that right there seems pretty simple. But I could go one step further, because of course I've defined all of this as a regex, right? There's a grammar in Raku. So why not let them just dump it straight into another grammar? So here you have a token. Maybe imagine some configuration file that you've got, where you're just going to say web : and then give them a URL. Okay, well, here, you can just dump it in. You've imported this module. Now you've got a new token that's ready to use. Right? You can smart match against it. Because it's a token, you can smart match against tokens in Raku. So we just put it in there, and now we can check. Do something if this is actually a valid URI, and if not, we go off and do something else. Okay? So this to me is like one of the really nice ones that I can pull off in Raku that can't really do in, like, you know, maybe you can parse out a URI in something like Java, but this is a lot harder to do, right? To just take something that's already been written and dump it in. Another interesting thing that I've been doing with this one is if we've got like a set of addresses, well, the URI has a standard for normalization. You can write the exact same URI in multiple different ways, right? But in Raku, we have this thing called value typing, right? Where same value, if it's the exact same thing, same representation, we can treat them as equivalent for the purpose of determining if two elements are unique or not. So here we've got do a set of all sorts of different addresses. And so if you've got HTTP in capital or in lowercase, the normalization says go to lowercase, and so that's what it does. It goes and handles all your normalization for you in the background. But I'm going to add an extra step. Make it extensible. This is what I meant by kind of future-proofing things. So those of you who've used URI, if you've read the URI standard, it already contemplates the idea that different schemes will be more restrictive and provide specific interpretations for different parts of their elements. Okay? So for instance, many of us have seen the data URI. I think almost everyone here has seen that at some point. You aren't allowed to use a host in that. So if we allow parsing of this data one, perhaps we could enable some way that if we see that the scheme is data, we now disallow a host. And we say, hey, if your scheme is data and you provide a host, even though technically it is a well-formed URI, we're going to reject it because we know that the data standard does not allow that one. We can also do other types of scheme-specific handling, right? Schemes can define custom attributes we might want to do. Again, if we got this data one, wouldn't it be great if once we parse it, we can just access its actual data as a blob? I feel like that'd be pretty useful for people. Make it nice and easy. And again, no extra work for them. They just parse it and it's there, ready to go. Or again, if you're doing HTTP, you get that query status. Again, you should not do it as a hash. Just saying, this is just for the sake of an example because lots of us do this, right? But you can have repeated elements in URLs for HTTP, so you should not just do a straight hash. Okay. All right, so my general philosophy here on making things extensible. Make it possible by design. Okay? The less hacky hack somebody has to be to extend your module, the better it is for everyone. Make it easy for the end user. And by the end user, I don't just mean the API. Make it easy for them to use those extensions that you've got. Nobody likes boilerplate. At least I hate boilerplate. It should just work. Or just work, not should. And then also make it easy-ish for the person who's actually doing that extension. Right? We do have the philosophy of torture the implementer, but why torture if no need? Okay? So, quick example of how I do this one. In this one, since I've got just a couple more minutes here, what you see here is in the main module, I keep track of different grammars, actions, and ports. Because these are the three main things that are going to adjust in this. Right? And just very easy, there's a single sub, register a new scheme. So anybody who's creating a new module, say like doing one for parsing the data URIs, that's all they have to do. Just run that sub, pass in a new grammar, an action, and a port. And then it takes care of everything. Right? In the actual grammar, when it parses, first thing we do, just grab the scheme really quickly, and then we end up just saying, okay, I'll change that grammar. But of course, these are grammars and action classes, which means you can just subclass it. Take advantage of all the work I've done. If you just have that one little thing that's different, that's all you have to do. For the user, that's all they have to do, and they get access to it. I don't think I can make that any easier for them. And then we'll make it easy-ish for the module maker. So here's an example of how I might adjust the HTTP one. I just changed the one token for query. Take advantage of the entire grammar that's already been written. Just change that one. And then we adjust how we interpret it. And then we register it. And that's it. So that is my talk. If anyone has any questions or comments.
Had a smart match to ampersand URI or something like that. What's with the ampersand?
So for some reason, when you're using tokens, you do need to put an ampersand in front of them. So that URI is actually exported as a token, and you've got to put an ampersand in front of them.
I didn't know that. Thanks.
Yeah. Because you can actually, what you can think there is, you know, if you just put that one is isolated on its own, right? Then it's going to be anticipating some arguments or other things like that. But we want a smart match against the subroutine itself rather than the result of the subroutine. If that makes sense. And that would apply for any routine that you're calling it against. Yeah. Remember, tokens are just methods, and methods are just subs with a default argument. All right, any other? Still morning? All right, thank you, everyone.